everyone. Hi, Ma'am Elenita. I'm Renan Bukoy from BSED English 2B. For today's video, we will discuss the development of children's literature during the 18th century and the mentioning following dates. So let's start with the 18th century was a starting point of children's literature as we know it. This was when books specifically were created and designed just for children. They focused primarily on moral lessons and how one should act and objected to tales of magic, wizards, and talking animals because of religious constraints. So, 1720, Divine and Moral Songs for Children by Isaac Watts created one of the first poetry books meant for children only. One of his songs being Joy to the World. This song is still present in school choir performance. Next, 1744. A Pretty Little Pocketbook by John Newbery. John Newbery realized that most children's books were only school books. He jumped into an untapped market and came out with his own collection of stories, illustrations, and poems, and it instantly became a must-have for children. So next is 1762, Emile by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, another founder of education that we currently study. His book, Emile, was an explanation of the ideal education that children should receive. Rousseau advocated for simplicity and living a moral life. So now let's discuss the development of children's literature at the end of the 18th century. So by the end of the 18th century, children's literature was a flourishing, separate, and secure part of the publishing industry in Britain. Perhaps as many as 50 children's books were being printed each year, mostly in London, but also on regional centres such as Edinburgh, York, and Newcastle. By today's standards, these books can seem pretty dry, and they were often very moralizing and pious. But the books were clearly meant to please their readers, whether with entertaining stories and appealing characters. The pleasant tone of the writing or attractive illustrations and eye-catching page layouts and bindings. The 19th century brought back the long-told folk tales and fairy tales that were loved by children, but shied away from in the 18th century. Children's literature began to focus on writing for entertainment purposes rather than just moral lessons. So 1812, Kinder and House Marchen are children's and household tales by Wilhelm and Jacob Grimm. 1827, The Youth's Companion's first publication, a magazine geared for children. 1835, Fairy Tales by Hans Christian Andersen. 1865, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This book is often seen as the first book written purely for entertainment purposes. The captivating characters and wild fantasies are still being recreated and told today in recent movies geared for both children and adult audiences. So lastly, with the invention and improvements made to color printing, children's books started to have more vivid illustrations. The end to the 19th century is when children's literature really came into its own and continued to develop in the 20th century. 1877, The Baby's Opera by Walter Crane. 1878, John Gilpin's Ride by Randolph Caldecott. And lastly, the 1888, The Pied Piper of Hamelin by Kate Greenaway.